I guess it's 5:30 here on the East Coast, 2:30 Pacific. We can go ahead and get started. I'll just introduce myself. My name's Kyle. You've probably seen me in the Keybase. I started Chia Decentral with JM. You know him as Storage JM. He is probably responsible for about a third of that almost 800 petabyte net space we're looking at right now. So you guys know him. Just we usually do this on Clubhouse on Sundays, but wanted to kind of switch things up, do Zoom, let you guys sit in and record and post it on YouTube so the rest of the community can check it out. But yeah, you want to say what's up, John Michael?
Hey, what's happening, guys? Happy Sunday. Most of you guys know me, Storage Jam. I'm a product manager at Intel for our data center SSDs. A friend of Chia. It's been a whole lot of fun the last couple. This last 5 weeks has been a hell of a ride watching the net space grow. So I know Kyle curated a bunch of questions. I've been answering as many questions as I can on DM over on Keybase on plotting and stuff. We can kind of go through. I know Kyle curated some questions, and I can kind of give some people, at least the questions I've been getting, a lot of the same questions. And so I'll see if I can do my best to answer.
Yeah, I think kind of before we jump into any specific, maybe plotting and farming questions, JM, what do you think about the net space growth we have here? I think we're kind of fluctuating between 750 and 800 petabytes, depending on when you check out the net space. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, our original models look kind of funny now. I think we all had predicted maybe 60 to 80, petabytes at launch, and then when that broke at 120 petabytes at launch, we're like, okay, we'll see, but maybe it'll start picking up once the coin price goes live. And I think we've just seen exponential growth. There's Chia Status, Chia NetSpace, Chia Explorer. Now there's a handful of websites that can track the NetSpace. So what I've done, you can actually just do an RPC call, or you just do it from the Chia. If you're activated, do like the Chia NetSpace and look back however many blocks. And we've mapped that out, and it is exponential growth with a 0.04 growth constant. And obviously that's not sustainable. You'd hit dozens of zettabytes by the end of the year, which is 6 times the amount of storage in existence that's available to the entire market. So it'll hit a cap at some point. I have my own model of when I think that will happen based off the supply and demand sufficiency of the HDD market. I think we had some questions about these different hard drive markets. Like the retail market, I think obviously has been getting hit hard. I think everybody has been feeling that. Anybody who's been on Amazon in the last 2 weeks trying to buy a hard drive has felt that very, very painfully. There's about 130 exabytes of that 1.2 to 1.3 zettabytes that the HDD market will ship this year. They go into the retail space. And that's I think that's split. I have to pull it up. Gartner and IDC kind of have different takes on this. Gartner kind of tracks it by capacity and size, but between 2.5 inch, 3.5 inch, and then consumer versus enterprise. I kind of like that. I think the IDC report tries to get a little bit too tricky. They map like surveillance and AI and all these different segments. But if that consumer segment is really only at 130 exabytes, and we've potentially seeing an increased demand by like 2 to 4%, that would suggest that we are seeing an ASP increase of like 30%, which is around what we're seeing hard drive prices go back to MSRP. If we see another 3% increased demand, it's going to shoot up hard drive prices another 30%. So I'm grabbing the popcorn. I don't know what's going to happen, but I know that in Bitcoin historically, the hashing power in Bitcoin has mapped very closely to the coin price as the coin price goes up. And even when it didn't, the hashing power went up for a long time, before the coin price went up. So I think we're going to see explosive net space. How you doing, Bram?
Hello.
Yeah, man, Bram, this is wild. I can 800 is what I just heard, but when I checked, it was 700 so.
Yeah, what in your models, like what coin price are you assuming?
Yeah, the interesting thing, we're going to hit a cap on just actual capacity of new drives and that's going to kind of knee in the curve, the hard drives that everybody just bought and are buying right now. But all the drives that just got bought right now, people are going to be plotting for the next month and a half to 2 months. So I think we're going to see very, very steep growth. And then there's going to be capacity that comes online from the other coins. I think we're already seeing that from like the old proof of capacity coins. We'll probably see that pretty aggressively from some of the Filecoin stuff, especially if the coin price gets set hard. The wild card in this is if there's a very high coin price, Bram, there's been some futures markets that have me sick to my stomach. That's going to cause massive amount of change in people's strategies. Like we're companies who have data that they have to store to run their business, at some point they're going to say like, hey, is it more profitable to farm Chia than run my business? The answer is most likely yes. But are people going to like stop their businesses to go farm Chia?
I mean, there are always companies that are on the verge of going under, right? So if a company can just say, we should have gone under already, but now
we can switch to a farming company, throw them a Hail Mary. So
yeah,
you might have to save some companies, Bram.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I don't remember all the spreadsheeting we did, but we were like, there's a few halvings built in, and so we assumed in the models that we'd hit, Bitcoin scale like, 10, 20 years in, something like that, after like the rewards are 1/16 what they are right now, I believe.
Oh my God, it's crazy.
Yeah, so we'll see how this goes, but I think like if let's say for the sake of argument that price is like $100 a Chia, like at what point would it just become like at what work difficulty would it just become unprofitable, even if
it's likely unprofitable right now at $100 a coin, Bram. So if you do a TCO model and just say, okay, how much does the actual capacity cost, and then you just say, okay, it's a 2-year payout, how many coins am I going to earn? And you have to have to predict that, you have to have your own model for what the net space growth will be. And then you say, okay, how many coins will I earn over the next 2 years? And most realistically, people are going to be farming for much longer than 2 years. But I think, people just don't like thinking that far out. And then you say, okay, what's the break-even price that the coin has to be to make this investment today on new hardware? Now that price goes higher if you include the plotting hardware. And right now, I think people are spending about even amount of money on plotting hardware versus farming hardware. So if it's just farming hardware, then the coin price needs to be basically half of what it needs to be.
Okay, but so then if it goes up to, so assuming that this is like a linear thing, then if we go up to like $1,000 a Chia, then at around 10 exabytes, it kind of chills out a bit, right?
Yeah, I think so. Just because of those, if there's a 13-week lead time on hardware, or they're literally just everywhere is sold out, people have to start transferring stuff that they already had online to Chia, and that needs a very high coin price for people to make that ROI and jump. And it's like you're sitting here, people are going to be at home with their NASs and be like, should I delete these videos for a couple more plots?
Yeah, it's like I can't answer that question for you. That's
I know, but
there's but if that like $9,000 a Chia price is real, that's pretty high.
I don't know if that's anything sustainable, right? Because I think that would suggest that every single SSD gets bought in farming, and basically at that price, you're like, fucking put a USB key in there, farm on it, just everything you can find. Every piece of storage you could possibly buy.
That gets
so it'll get. I know it'll get pretty crazy, but I think it's fun now. In case just why, we're hearing lots of people like, oh my God, if I'm plotting right now, is it too late? And the answer is absolutely not. It doesn't cost very much money to keep a hard drive alive and powered on. If you can buy it for MSRP or even slightly above and run it for 3 to 5 years, you're going to earn Chia. At some point, you can join a pool and earn, those rewards will be smoothed out. In the future, the plotting will be more efficient and faster, and it'll be more available to do as plotting as a service for people that don't want to spend a lot of money on compute. And there'll be tons of options, and so just having the storage available is actually the number one thing. So I know I've been answering that question to a lot of people, like, should I buy this hard drive? Yes, Is it available? Can you buy it? Is it in your cart? You should buy it.
Yeah, there's a lot of sites already, putting cap, letting one hard drive go. There's rumors of, Best Buy still doesn't have a cap on their 16 and 18 terabyte externals, but we're seeing there's going to be at least a temporary supply chain issue. And it's not putting a dent on the entire hard drive market yet, but there will be, with supply chains doing a lot of just-in-time manufacturing, and they're all very optimized, and they don't handle excessive demand popping up really well. So I think we will see it taper out in the growth, but
yeah, it's weird because like Filecoin is around like 4 exabytes, and they didn't cause the same kind of disruption.
I think a lot of it actually has to do with the kind of global part shortage that we're just seeing now, even across all kind of commodity goods, from lumber, aluminum. There was a big buying hold, especially in a lot of the industries that I kind of work my day job in. They didn't purchase anything for 6 or 7, 8 months during COVID. And as soon as the economy started turning around, everybody started mass kind of buying for the year. And then that created panic that there may have been a part shortage coming. So people were projecting out 6, 9, 12 months to purchase some of their goods. And it was kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy.
I have a theory that we can probably. Sorry. Thanks, FaceTime. That was nice. Yeah, I have a theory. We could probably ask some Filecoin people here if that really is true. That they probably had a lot longer to go think about the hardware build and I think get it set up. I think it took them like many months of testing, and it wasn't like Chia where you could just buy a hard drive and plug it into a desktop and start plotting away and farming. Like for Filecoin, you have to have like as far as I know, a pretty high-end system. Yeah. And like they had probably a lot more time to procure that and get it set up, kind of like we had for the beta and whatnot. Like a lot of us that were around since the beta have been building our farms for many, many months. It wasn't like we had to build it in a week or two. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, some articles are claiming that there are scalpers now who are turning a profit that
on hard drives.
Yeah, people are scalping hard drives.
I believe it. We saw kind of in the Keybase people posting links from China that third-party hard drives are selling for 60 to 100% more than they were 2 months ago.
Yeah, such begins the craziness. But
Bram, in your world, I don't know if you guys had discussed this, but when did you think that we'd hit 100,000 nodes?
Not this fast. This is very fast. This is a lot quicker than anticipated. Yeah, thought maybe like towards the end of this year or something. I mean, that's not something we specifically discussed all that much, but yeah, I mean, this is bananas.
And the software's doing its thing. Beyond, you guys cleaned up a couple syncing issues and a couple node issues this week, right?
Hey, we're improving a lot of things. There's lots more things to be done.
Yeah. When you go to that scale, things start breaking, right?
Well,
and
we're for on the scale of mining software, our stuff is very usable and good. On the scale of like consumer internet, it's very immature. So we're working on improving it. There's a bunch of things that are really, really on fire right now. Working on getting pooling protocols out as quickly as possible. Yeah, I really want people to be using good pooling protocols. So right now there's a pool that's using a very bad pooling protocol. But the big feature for pooling, that as we're going to do it, is you're going to be able to jump between pools. as you go. And what we're going to try to do is, as quickly as possible, make it so that you're able to plot with that feature in place, even though the pooling protocol isn't done yet. So at least you're plotting with the ability to jump pools. And then once pooling protocols roll out, you'll be able to join pools. But in the meantime, you're just earning Chia directly yourself.
I think if you've been on Reddit or Twitter or Keybase, people will be very happy to hear that.
Yeah. I've seen people freaking out about this. I share their concerns. You see so many people having issues, and it's so hard to tell, is this just one person having this issue? Is this a common issue? Is this something that's really messed up in their setup, or is it our fault? It can be very, very hard to tell sometimes. So we're really trying to improve everything and trying to do it as quickly as we possibly can. and we'd always like to be able to do it faster. This is very immature software. We're working on it.
130,000 nodes or whatever we're reading, just crazy. Yeah, when you don't expect something like that, it kind of throws a wrench into things. But
yeah, definitely our introducer stuff has been suffering from some issues related to scale, some issues related to the fraction of peers that are behind routable things, some issues related to someone's DDoSing our introducer. So we had to do a bunch of things to put the kibosh on that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was funny. It was last Sunday when we were in the clubhouse, and we got the bomb dropped on everybody that there were 40,000 nodes. I think it was 60,000, 65,000 later that night, and now here we are a week later with double that. And the NetSpace growth has reflected that. I track it every morning, and I was like 395 petabytes. Wow, I can't believe that it grew that much. And now
some of these numbers, it's like, wait, is that a misprint? Going on with that number?
But yeah, I mean, I can tell you with our site traffic, Freddie, Chia Explorer's traffic, the subreddit, the Keybase, it all reflects it. We're all seeing the same graphs.
Well, like a mobile app that gets up to 100,000 users in a couple of weeks is like this smash, unbelievable hit, and this is like a desktop application people are running. So,
yeah, it's, it takes a couple hours, like an hour to sync for the first time. I haven't done it in a while.
Well, it's just a UX barrier around like all the security warnings that your computer screams at you when you try to actually.
Oh yeah, the firewalls. Are you sure you want to open this port on Windows? You're like, yeah.
Just running an application on your desktop that can access files and stuff. This is something like most people's desktops are, browser terminals basically. Like that's they never install anything on it. Their computer commensurately freaks out whenever they try to, because it's like, this could be a big security problem here.
People are plotting on their M1 Max and all that stuff. I'm like, oh god.
Jay, I've got a good question for you in here. If you had $10,000 today, what would you do? Would you put it into hard drives, and what for plotting?
Well, yeah, I think a 50-50 split is going to get you a good return right now, because you need to plot decently fast because the net space is growing. But there's also that part right now, which is like, shoot, if you overspend on plotting hardware, then you're going to be stuck. But the good thing about it, like a lot of people are buying desktops, like it's not like desktops are just going to magically be worth nothing when you're done plotting. Like it's a gaming desktop, you can go sell on Craigslist for like either more than you bought it for in like many cases right now, or just like what you bought it for. So I wouldn't be sweating it. But obviously the long-term thing is, again, people forget that like you can farm for a very, very long time once you get the plots on the drive. So, over in the long term, like talking like 2 to 3 year horizon, all that will matter is the amount of capacity you have. In the shorter term, there's a better ROI for plotting faster, and it's very actually, and I apologize. I know Kyle, I think the guys at the Chia Calculator site reached out to you. I haven't met them personally, but I do like the site, and I'm going to I'll probably give them access to my NetSpace model, because I like using the tool to calculate how many Chia you can earn for a given capacity and plotting speed. I think it's really good. They're just kind of broken if you try to do daily growth out, but beyond 3 months, again, you get to that point where it's like dozens of zettabytes. You're like, okay, this sucks. But I really like the tool, and they got the right idea. So you just do some modeling like anybody. You just say, okay, well, if I plot it, 30 terabytes a day versus 10 terabytes a day.
How much? How much how much hard drives are really manufactured? I think, per what you said, I think we're going to see a lot of existing storage, hopefully over provisioned and not just let's delete our file storage. Is going to
spending a lot of time. I'll actually I can even pull up these reports here in a minute. I have the Gartner report in front of me, and I have the IDC report for all the hard drives. The Gartner report says like 1.37 zettabytes this year is projected. I think the Gartner ones, or the IDC one's a little bit lower. I think it's like 1.2 something. But my understanding, and I think I have to go back and look at the last Seagate earnings call. I actually haven't been on. They just released a quarter or so, but the hard drive fabs are very expensive. Like I think it's in between $5 and $10 billion, probably closer to 10, I think. And they take a long time to build, and there's not very many of them. And they're running those factories at very high capacity right now. It's not like they're just going to be like, oh, we can triple the hard drive output. Like if anything, they can maybe get another 1 or 2% squeezed out. It's very likely that some of these suppliers will be sold out for a couple quarters. And, if this causes some scare at the enterprise customers, again, so for WD and Seagate, a very large percentage of the nearline business, nearline is what they call these high capacity hard drives for the 3.5 form factor that are conventional magnetic recording or perpendicular. Yeah. And, these hyperscale cloud guys buy like 70% of the hard drives, like Amazon, Facebook, Microsoft, Google. They're not going to piss those guys off. Those are the guys that are keeping WD and Seagate in business. So what do you think they're going to do? They're going to just not give them the supply? No, they'll still give them the supply, even though they can make a higher mark, even though they could sell that drive for 3 times more to a retail customer. They will try very aggressively to move more of that demand over to the retail space because they can make more money on it now. But I don't think that they're going to piss off their long-term customers. That would be a very poor thing to do if you were WD and Seagate. But it's going to be interesting to see. So if you take that retail market, like 130 exabytes, and take 3% of that, I mean, that's already a huge demand increase for a market that's reasonably stable. Like I would be very shocked if we see like just
their run rate business monthly, they may have their seasonal demand around Black Friday or around Christmas time as people are getting new computers. But I have to imagine in a mature market like that, it looks very, very stable throughout the year, and seeing something post-COVID in March and April will throw a short-term on there.
Well, there's probably a lot more of a blip in like enterprise class SSD than there is, or at least that's going to go back down to normal a lot quicker because people are going to have their plotting rigs that they just kind of keep using.
The enterprise SSD one's funny too. I mean, just the used ones, because there's not, I think people are exploring this wild market of used enterprise hardware, which of course I've been an avid browser of random ass used enterprise hardware on eBay forever. It's cracking me up. Like, that people are buying these like U.2 to M.2 adapters and all this stuff that used to just be exotic, like weird ass computer hardware that people are like, yeah, I know what that is now. It's like, yes, I've done my job.
Yeah, so for that, probably what's going to happen is people are going to have their plotting rigs that they just kind of keep using. And also a lot more of it is going to come online because it's not so exotic now. So a lot of companies are like, oh, we can actually sell this. So they're, taking it.
Yeah. So the good news is for all that crap that's increased price by like 30 or 40% because of the short-term demand, that creates more competition. This happened exactly the same with mining hardware. If you go look at like these little like adapters or power supply cables and crap that you need for these like Ethereum mining and stuff like that, that stuff is like dirt cheap right now because all these people rush to go make a bunch of supply for all this hardware, and then the price drops because there's lots of competition. Previously in this enterprise SSD space for desktop use, that is a market that didn't really exist. It's just a very niche, like high-end market. And eventually it's going to make me very happy to see those cards go from like $25 a card to like $5 a card.
So, well, let's just say the rumor has it that you might be able in the not terribly distant future to get hard drives which just sort of plot on their unused space underneath the file system in the background.
Yeah, I'm looking right now. So this is the IDC report, personal and entry level storage for 2021, 129,000 petabytes, so 129 exabytes, and then PC distribution channel, 93,000, and then video surveillance, 133. So yeah, the personal, out of that 1.2 zettabytes, the personal entry storage is a very, very small percentage of the overall hard drive market.
And if you extrapolate that over like a monthly run rate, you're probably looking at about 10, 11 exabytes a month in retail drive sales. And you start looking as Chia's creeping up to, maybe 3 or 4 exabytes have been purchased globally off retail shelves that are still waiting to be plotted. Like the unique addresses and node count would sure,
And
sense something around that. But
so by the end of the year, if we have this rate continue plus, once we have price, a whole bunch of IT places are just going to start going, hey, we should actually do this with our extra space here. We might be looking at like 50, 100 exabytes by the end of the year or something like that for net space.
Cool. Kyle, I'm looking at a question in the chat that it's a good question because I've got it multiple times in my DM and in the plotting hardware channel. But somebody said, yeah, I noticed, used some PCIe Gen 4 drives in Gen 3 mode. Is Gen 4 PCIe Gen 4 better for plotting? Certainly on bigger drives. So the cap on PCIe Gen 3x4 NVMe SSDs is about 3,500 megabytes per second read and write, and PCIe is bidirectional. So you can, if you are doing a mixed workload, you can go slightly higher than that. But in the PCIe Gen 4x4 goes to about 7.4 gigabytes per second. So you're not going to see that kind of bandwidth on a drive from plotting unless you're plotting many parallel plots. So I have a 7.68 terabyte PCIe Gen 4 drive here that I've got up to about 30 plots in this, 30 processes on a single drive, and you start hitting some Gen 4 speeds, but just barely. Like, it's very hard. So it's perfectly fine. You buy these Gen 4 drives, put them in a Gen 3 system, no big deal. They run perfectly great. Your bottleneck in plotting hardware, especially these plotting SSDs, is actually the sustained bandwidth. It's not whatever the spec sheet bandwidth is. These consumer SSDs have some portion, either dynamic or static SLC cache, that basically adapts on the fly to a different type of mode. SLC is single level cell and NAND. It actually is much faster and higher endurance than MLC or TLC, but it does this on the fly, and it's actually a NAND die thing. So the firmware and the controller basically just tells the NAND die to basically flip between a SLC or a TLC based on a percentage of the of the drive use. This is not good for plotting, right? As soon as that cache wears out, you go to the sustained bandwidth, and your sustained bandwidth is basically a function of how many NAND die you have on the drive. So small drives have very few NAND die, and you have very low sustained performance. Larger drives have a lot more NAND die, and you have much better sustained performance. And this is true on every SSD. And then the media type plays a big difference. But we are seeing a huge, I've answered a ton of questions like, why is my plotting speed 35,000 seconds versus yours at 15,000 on the same system? I'm like, what SSD are you using? They send me the SSD. I'm like, that's a piece of shit. Get a new SSD. So yeah, it's a long answer to a short question, but yeah, there's a lot of mileage in different out of all the variability of CPUs and DRAM and all the hardware you can use for plotting hardware. I think the largest variable in your plotting speed is going to be CPU speed and number of cores and threads, and then what type of SSD you're using. So
yeah, like the Chia plotting is a weird load that it puts on a system. It's like very different than you normally see, and it's something where I think like throughput matters a lot more than it does for almost anything else.
It does, yeah. It's write throughput, yeah. Because read throughput is very easy. Even low capacity SSDs can do very high read throughput. Mm-hmm. It's write throughput that's sustained. People got to remember, like, if you have a 1K = 32 plot, still writes 1.4 terabytes of data. If you're writing 5 plots simultaneously to a drive, you take 1.4 and multiply by 5. That's how much data you're writing. For in the single time it takes for a K = 32 to complete. It's a lot of data being written a day, and your SSD might be averaging 400 or 500 megabytes per second, average write bandwidth, and it's a lot of writes. It's a ton of writes, yeah.
Did you see anything in the Q&A that
if I'm plotting on multiple machines with the same IP, do I need to disable UPnP if I boot up the system? Well, generally, you don't need to run more than one full node in a single home, because if you're trying to farm on multiple machines, you can run a harvester and then point the harvester at the farmer. If you're accidentally running, if you're just running two GUIs in two different systems because you don't know how to use the CLI or something, you probably want to port forward the one that's your main farmer so they don't get confused. Turn off UPnP. But that would be my recommendation. But actually my real recommendation is learn the CLI, because it's much more powerful than the GUI for plotting. So
get a how-to guide, or I'm sure somebody's working on a video of how to use that.
Yeah, there's lots more that I heard from one of the guys on Keybase today. He's gonna launch a YouTube on some Chia stuff very shortly. It's good because I quite frankly, unfortunately, don't have a lot of time. There's like a million videos I have in my head that would be awesome to do on some of this stuff, but and I will on SSDs because that's my domain. So all right, Kyle, we had some good questions in the forum or chat or something, right? I can take a peek at these.
Yeah, let's see. Price. Just questions about enclosures and JBODs, and if you can talk kind of a bit about considerations and good brands and options for that.
Sure. Well, this is also an interesting one because JBOD is typically not something that sees a high demand. In fact, WD and Seagate give away their JBODs basically, or sell them for a very small price to sell the drives that are included in them. Because if you think about it, if you have 102 drives and these are 18 terabyte drives and they're selling for between $400 and $600 a piece, they can afford to give away $1,000 JBOD pretty easily in that deal. But now a JBOD is very valuable because in Chia, as people have learned, like I see these pictures on Reddit and shit with people like zip tying drives to a fucking pole, and like I'm like, oh no, oh god. So hard drives have this thing, they have a moving part, they have a motor in them. They have this thing called rotational vibration. And when you design a JBOD, you design these drive carriers to have mounting screws that mount in there, and they have reduced the dampening on the rotational vibration that increases the longevity of the drives. It also makes sure that they have enough fan speed on the drive so they keep them cool over the lifetime of the drive. Also, desktop PSUs and ATX power supply, doesn't have enough current to support more than 4 drives without staggered spin up for hard drives. So people are daisy chaining a bunch of power, SATA power cables to these power cables. Like the Molex one actually has a higher current than the actual SATA 11-pin power connector.
Like hard drives would actually last longer in space, wouldn't they?
So I got to think about this now.
Well, if you're trying to not dampen the vibrations, right? Because that's going to be doing.
I know for SSDs, when you get to high altitude, the chance of having a bit flip due to cosmic rays and alpha particles actually increases exponentially. I know because we have a controller that's been designed to detect 2 and fix 1 bit flip in the DRAM, and we have ECC in the SRAM path. But so some things get harder in space. I know that.
Yeah. I just meant in terms of.
I have. I'm sure somebody knows the answer to that.
Are we going to get our next Chia plotter and farmer?
Bram, why don't you give your buddy Elon a call and tell him we're going to fucking send some hard drives to space?
No, well, you could. Well, if you really want to not dampen the vibrations, you should hold everything in place with like tensegrity, right? You should have some elastic cables that are that are holding your drives. So
if you can see, they have these little and there's, not that it really matters for home use, but like in data centers, EMI is an issue. You don't want electromagnetic interference from one piece of equipment interfering with another, and so they have these basically metal gaskets outside of the HDD enclosures that prevent the EMI from spreading to other components and all this stuff. And there's all these tests for desktops have less stringent requirements than servers and blah, blah. Actually, workstations have the most stringent EMI requirements, I found out, than actually more than servers. But got it. So there's a question about farming hardware.
Yep.
And it matters on how many drives you need, right? So there's a bit like, people are like, what should I buy for my farmer? It's like, is it 1 drive? Is it 30 drives? Is it 100 drives? I mean, those are very different answers depending on how many drives you have. So the post we wrote on our website, like basically goes through for a couple drives. Like if you have 4 drives, just stick them in your desktop, or USB is fine. If you have 10 drives, you probably want a full tower or like a NAS case. If you have 12 to 16 drives, you probably want a 4U chassis that you build. You can do that for a couple $100. If you have more than 16 drives, now you're in JBOD territory. And yeah, the SM45s, everybody in the chat, I told, to grab one for $200 down in the warehouse in Bay Area are very happy, because I think they all did that. He sold out of JBODs. I think they're going for a lot more now, but yeah, for that many drives, you definitely want a JBOD. They are designed to hold a bunch of drives. They have power supplies, they have fans, they have carriers that do all those things I just said to help with EMI and.
Does JBOD stand for just a bunch of disks?
Yeah, just a bunch of disks or just a bunch of drives, depending on who you ask. Which is great. That's exactly what they are. It's just it's a house for drives. That they're very happy in their JBOD house, and that's where they like to live.
Some people who are running NASs and stuff this is I'm unclear on what's going on here. Some people, it appears to have been having issues where they appear to be farming fine, but when they actually get a block, they just can't make the block. They can't make the proof of space fast enough.
Is this because of I've used a ton of NFS stuff for moving plots around, and I hate it. Okay, so if you forget to unmount an NFS and then just do a DF or disk, you're trying to look at your disk utilization or DUF, it just sits there and times out for 2 minutes. It's not like, oh, you have an NFS mount that's not connecting. It's just like, oh, we'll have a 4-minute timeout or something. The defaults on NFS are just abysmal. And so if people are mounting.
Yeah. So unfortunately, this includes Jeff Atwood, who's been having weird issues. It did something that didn't look like it should make any difference at all. He rearranged the files on his drives and it helped things. What? It's so weird. But apparently some of these things, if you do a whole bunch of seeks, the individual seeks can be very, very slow sometimes.
Oh, I know. I think I know what's happening probably, or maybe they haven't been RAID. So, when you're doing these lookups, okay, if you, if you're doing a RAID 5 and you have 4 drives and you're trying to do the read, you have to read the data off 3 of those drives. And the default on the NAS, if you have a consumer NAS, all the GUIs that you go through to go create a volume, basically default to data protection. Because if you're buying a NAS for home use, why would you not want data protection? That's the whole point of a NAS, is so you don't lose data. And so if you're using a NAS with strong data protection and you have these, especially if this is very true, if you just started your NAS and you just clicked go create the RAID, the horrible MD80M, the firmware on this stupid old code is so bad. When you initialize an MD80M RAID 5, it goes off and initializes the entire fucking array. And it does the entire parity stripes, and it writes all the parity for the entire span of all the LBAs. On a brand new hard drive, that could take a week. If you bought a NAS and just turn it into a RAID 5, this could take a very long time to initialize. That will drastically impact your write performance. It will absolutely affect your write performance. It will absolutely affect the latency. You will see 2-second, 3-second outliers on the latency during random reads because they're going to get stuck. So I don't know if that's
yeah, I don't know. The only thing we can do is right now, it's assuming you have a good 30 seconds to get your proof of space going and transmit it and everything. So that should be plenty of time. Even if your individual seeks are 10 milliseconds, you have to do 64 of them for your complete proof of space. You're still
what if you're seeing 2-second outliers and you have a 95% quality of service with 2-second outliers, and you have 5% of the IOs complete in 5 seconds, or 2 to 5 seconds, and then you have to do 64 seeks. You could easily be above 30 seconds.
It could be.
Because I can even do
5%, but it could be that there could be all kinds of weird performance things that it could do it. The thing that we can do that's now on our to-do list with way too much stuff on it at the moment is try and parallelize those lookups, because it's structured as a tree, right? So you need to figure out the quality. So that's 8 lookups going to back, but then if you win, then you need to do a total of 64 lookups, which does not include the 8 you just did. And those you can do, that's 64 total. And right now it's done as 64 sequential. Or maybe it's 120.
You could just do you could just do them async and do
Yeah,
and then
you can do it so that you can do it like depth first, so that it's only really like 8 sequential instead of 64
yeah.
sequential.
So the way in SATA, there's a thing called native command queuing. So SATA supports a queue depth of 32. And what happens is when you send that burst of commands to the controller, it'll get sent to the DRAM in the hard drive. And the queuing in the firmware will say, okay, where is that data on the disk as far as physical location, and try to do them in the right order that minimizes the spin time. So that's
you need an API where you can warn it like, okay, here's a bunch of lookups that I want, and you don't just do all of these. Here's a bunch of lookups to do. And
that would be pretty easy to test though. Couldn't you just change it to an async thing and then do some proof challenge time lookups and some of these? So you could do that test I described, which is take a 3-drive RAID 5, do an initializer rebuild, and then try to look up.
We don't have this hardware. Some people seem to be having these problems, but it's not on any hardware that we have sitting around.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, the NASs are weird. Also like in Chia, ideally you want to do basically single drive volumes, because if you have a drive die, you just want to replace it and rebuild the data on the drive. And none of the NAS UIs are set up very nicely to do that. You have to do, like on Synology, you have to create an individual volume and an individual storage pool, and then on top of that, create an individual
my
shader.
Personal experiences with NASs have been horrible. That they're often these like enterprise pieces of hardware that cost a significant like actual multiplier on the cost of the underlying hardware and aren't even easy to use in response to that.
The thing I like about Synology is just that if people are looking for like, how do I store a large amount of drives in a small space? Like if you're looking to store 8 to 12 drives in a small amount of space for very low power, like those things are real power efficient. They're just really small, but yeah, I hear you. Yeah, they're way more expensive than if you wanted to do a DIY solution. Like if you want to build your own NAS, it's 10 times more powerful and half the price.
I mean, like if you have like an EMC machine. Or something.
Yeah, that's like a like an enterprisey thing.
Yeah, they're enterprisey, and the weird thing is they just kind of suck. Like they're not even good at what they do. like I don't get it. Why do people buy these? It's like buying Oracle or something. Like,
well, and for although that's even worse because the value of enterprise software stacks on top of like these SANs or whatever, or like the compression and dedupe algorithms and erasure coding and backend storage rebuilds, none of that matters in Chia. So
yeah, well, the funny thing is that like all the like crazy algorithmic stuff that's done that produced all the plotting speedups in Chia plotting are probably techniques that would actually make Hadoop a lot better. Like, they're very sophisticated techniques that are being used for this like kind of plebeian application.
There's an easy one here, Kyle. I can do.
I was going to say, you want to do some rapid fire?
Yeah,
plotting and farming in the same machine a bad idea?
Not at all. I do it all the time. I have plotters that are also harvesters, so I can take advantage of those plots as soon as they hit the hard drive.
How do you know if and when you need to update the Chia software?
Chia.net.
Yeah, you should be, well, first off, if you initially installed Chia software before like a week or so ago, your software is going to stop working any day now, and it's not going to freak out and warn you beforehand. So upgrade now if you haven't done so in the last couple of days, because you really, really need to. That's the important thing. Right now, yeah, it's like, yeah, because we have the release of transaction support that's coming up real soon now. So actually a few days before transactions start, which is any day now, the original software is going to stop working, and then obviously you want to be properly supporting new transactions. So you should be upgrading early and often, and definitely right now. Hopefully that'll settle down pretty soon as our software improves.
Kyle, I'll answer one. Just like I touched on it, but I'm getting a ton of questions in the like DMs about like, okay, I have this configuration. I have 12 cores, 64 gigs of RAM, or 16 cores, 64 gigs of RAM. how much SSD should I buy? So we have a nice table in that article we wrote on for every K equals 32, it's a 256.6 gigabytes of temporary storage space and 3,400 megabytes. I think it's like 3389 for DRAM. So literally just do the math. If it's 12 cores, 12 times 3,400, that's how much RAM you need. 12 times 256.6, that's how much storage space you need. Okay, if it comes out to 3.2 terabytes, okay, or 3.1 terabytes, okay, now you're kind of in a sticky spot. Do you buy 3 drives or 4 drives? Well, that's going to have to be your decision. If you want to buy 4 drives, that's better. You're going to get better IOPS per terabyte out of more drives. The more drives you buy, 2 drives, 2 1 terabyte drives will always outperform 1 2 terabyte drive. There's 2 controllers, and you generally get twice the IOPS per terabyte. This is very, very true on data center drives. And the consumer drives might be a little tricky because when you put consumer drives in a RAID 0, your performance is going to be bottlenecked by the slowest one. That's why you never ever want to put different types of drive models in a RAID 0, because then you're going to be bottlenecking one of the drives to wait for the other one to do the commands. So if you're going to do a RAID 0, do the same drive, but generally speaking, 2 drives is better than 1. And just do the math. It's super easy. Just figure out how many drives, how much capacity you need for however many plotting processes you want to do. So,
of course, everything is very colored right now by work difficulty exploding. Presumably, work difficulty will eventually settle down a bit, and then you won't be in this unbelievable rush to get everything done, and that dramatically changes the calculus of what plotting setup you want.
You mean not jumping 4 or 5 work difficulties every day?
Yeah. This is.
I liked when we had, I liked when it was 1 a day. That was better. Can we go back to that?
I vividly remember somebody going, "Oh my God, it went from 18 to 19," and then it was, "Oh, we jumped from 37 to 42." Bram, we got one in the chat for you. Kind of 2-part, but probably associated. Can you use a Mojo for a DID? And can you just kind of talk a little bit more about some interesting or not interesting use cases for colored coins?
Okay, so it turns out there's an awful lot of functionality that is based off of singletons. So if I'm rattling off a list off the top of my head of interesting smart coins. So rate limited wallet is a big one. So that one is, you want to have a wallet that can spend at a certain rate, but then there's this backup key that can just pull everything out of it immediately. And generally speaking, what you want to do with that is you have your key that's hot, which could potentially get hacked. And if you notice you've been hacked, you go get your key from cold storage that allows you to recover everything and pull it all back again, right? That one, you really want it based off of a singleton because you want people to be able to pay into it. You want people to be able to pay into it. And if there are like 10 payments into it and you get hacked, you want the attacker to not be able to spend at 10 times the rate they were supposed to. You don't want them to be able to like make basically 10 copies and spend at 10 times the rate by folding in all the payments in at once. So for that, you want a singleton. For a DID, that very much is a singleton, right? That there's one copy of it. DID is generally referring to things that you give permissions, right? You want to be able to give something permission, revoke that permission, have smart coins validate that something does have that permission. Then another one that we're working on right now is if you are if you're using a pool, right? You want to be able to jump between pools. So you want it to be that your rewards are set to be paid to a particular singleton. And when you join a pool, you put a smart coin within a smart coin. You make the inner puzzle of your singleton be one that enforces that for the time being, all rewards are going to be going into this particular pool. And you have some way of undoing it. So you can say, okay, I don't want to be a member of that pool anymore, but it's going to take you some time to pull that off. So that way the pool knows that you can't just like yank it if you happen to win a block, right? They don't want you collecting your partials. And then when you win a block to just keep it for yourself. Yeah, so a singleton, a general purpose singleton is a very central thing to what we're doing. So my plan as of yesterday for how we're going to do our pooling protocol is we're going to build a standard format of singletons that's going to be used across a bunch of these things, a standard format of pay to singleton, which is also very handy. And then build a singleton faucet. So you like solve a CAPTCHA and it gives you a singleton on chain. It's so that even if you haven't won any Chia yet, this thing will put through the transaction for you. And that will be, and then have UX around your singleton wallet, blah, blah, blah. That will be enough to make it so people can start plotting for making plots where the payouts go to a singleton instead of going to a particular key, and we'll be able to join pools once those are ready using those plots that they're making now, or not now, but soon. Those are all, I think, very cool pieces of functionality and what we're working towards. Then later on, we gotta, actually make the pooling protocols, get that up and running. We have a lot of stuff to do.
So are you going to release the plot format for that includes pooling and have it full backwards compatibility with the current stack?
Yeah, we already did.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the only difference is the hook for this that we built already is you can alternatively have a plot that specifies a puzzle hash, which rewards go to for the pooling rewards, rather than specifying a public key. The farming rewards still go to a public key because you need to sign off on the transaction set, and all the transaction rewards go to the farmer. But for the pool rewards, yeah, the hook, the out of expedience, because we didn't have transactions when we first launched, and that wasn't finalized yet, we were just using the keys everywhere. But we already put in the hook so that you can specify a puzzle hash in your plot format, and otherwise it's basically the same. And that can, of course, be the hash of some smart transaction thing.
So right now, the default is not, like, if you're just plotting default, it doesn't put anything for the puzzle hash in.
It gives a public key for the pool,
Okay.
that needs to sign off on it instead of specifying a puzzle hash.
I see.
Yeah, so the idea is that it will now work out the details of a format where the puzzle hash specifies a pay to singleton that works that way.
Interesting. Which kind of goes to this next question, which says, if there's a lot of, in normal proof of work, you can mine to somebody else's wallet and donation wallet, and can the same thing be done in Chia? Can you plot to a destination without knowing the project's private keys? Yeah, you can point a farming reward to any address you want.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, when we first made plot file formats, we didn't have Chia Lisp finalized. We didn't have Chia Lisp finalized until like a week ago, or less than a week ago. And so we made it all based on public keys, but things are, we made sure that at the time we launched, it had been finalized enough that our standard format puzzle was set. So we made sure to not break that when we finally built transaction support. But like our cost function wasn't set, and we moved around some of the conditions that are not used in our standard format puzzle more recently before transaction support. But we did very much make sure that we're not breaking any of the rewards that people have already paid, that those will be spendable. So,
Cool.
And our transactions, are those going to be pegged to a specific block, or are they going to be timestamped?
I'm not sure what you're.
Oh, are they going to? I know there was some discussion about doing it like at exactly 10 a.m. on.
Oh, yeah, we estimated what the height is going to be at 10 a.m. on the 3rd. So there's going to be some amount of noise there. Like it's going to be 10 a.m. plus or minus a couple of minutes, I think. Or maybe we did it by timestamp. I'm not 100% sure. It's Things are going at 10 a.m. on the 3rd, plus or minus a couple of minutes is the upshot of it. We'll probably be doing a Zoom when it happens. Despite the optics, our crunch was like, it's passed already. It's in the release that supports transactions. So we're not going to be scrambling at the moment that happens, at least hopefully, fingers crossed, it all goes smoothly. We'll see how that goes. What we don't really know about yet is trading support. There's going to be a price discovery happening after that. That's going to be interesting. Not sure how.
I am surprised. Bram, do you guys have like an NDA on signed with any of these guys as far as disclosures on when they're going to launch the announcement, or do you guys have a restriction on when they can launch the announcement?
So we are talking to exchanges, but we can't give details on the.
Okay, but if an exchange, for instance, wanted to trade Chia and they could publicly say, yeah, we're going to trade it on this date, they could say that today.
Yeah, I think some of them have kind of said that, but like.
Okay.
They need to build technical support for it. And, their exchanges, they're kind of squirrely about how their technical systems work because they're terrified of people messing with them for good reason.
Yeah, I'm just actually surprised that we're this close, and none of these larger guys have given us like a date of like, yeah, usually it's like, oh, here's the date we can start trading.
Well, you actually have to support BLS signatures.
Oh, so they have to build some new libraries and
yeah. Well, and Ethereum has been saying everyone's going to have to support BLS signatures for ETH2, which causes everyone to laugh at this point when you say, hey, you're going to need to build BLS support for ETH2 anyway. And then they all chuckle. And it's like, okay, well. all right. Maybe that's not really happening.
Well, I think we probably got time for one more question. Don't see anything in the Q&A or the chat.
There's another easy one. I don't know if it matters, networking stuff. Yeah, I think if people are going to realize once you're at home and you're moving hundreds of terabytes of data around, gigabit networking is not very fun. You're limited to about, I think it's 7 or 8 terabytes a day between if you're fully saturating 1 gigabit per second link. So 10 gig is great. No, I just bought a bunch for some equipment I have. I just bought 4 10 gig cards, 10 base T for $50 on eBay. So no, they're not expensive. You can buy a 10 gig card with SFP for $30. So
yeah, we're not going to hit a day when you're like the thing that is your local hard drive is actually in the cloud. You still need a local hard drive, even if you have good net connections. Like that latency and
I think people that are finding that out if anybody tried to do cloud plotting, they're finding out the hard way that the net-based growth can be absolutely crushingly painful. So
well, coming right up against, I guess, 6:30 out here. Bram, any closing comments as we head into another week?
I don't know if told everyone about this a week ago, but some folks in China held a conference claiming to be us and collecting money for a pre-sale of Chia. Just straight up scamming.
That's a bummer.
Like an actual conference which people attended and stuff.
That sucks. I know a lot of people are really excited about Chia.
Yeah, 3D printed letters and the green strobe lights and all that.
Yeah.
Jeez, that looked like a real event with paid actors and everything.
Yeah, it's completely crazy. There are like real Chia enthusiasts in China. There's someone did what is apparently a quite good translation of our business white paper, and where the word of what's actually going on is getting out. I did an interview for someone in China the other day, so we're working on getting boots on the ground that actually represent us as a company in China. Also getting that elsewhere in the world, and
yeah, if there's that much excitement, right, we can tell you just because Kyle and I, have a website, and we have seen like a huge amount of traffic from China. So I think it's going to be important. I know Freddie said something similar. So
it was overnight. I think on a 4 or 5 day stretch, we went from getting 2,000-3,000 visitors a day from China up from 50, and we're just like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Something's
it was literally quite literally overnight. Yeah, it was crazy. So I know
Yeah.
it's growing too. So there is legitimate interest, and yeah, it sounds like you guys are going ahead on.
Yeah. So we're we know about how everybody wants pooling. We're working on it. We got lots and lots of stuff to do. The I think in the future, people will get excited about Chia Lisp. Right now, everyone's just excited about farming because that's what's out and what people have access to. But our on-chain programming environment is actually much, much better than the Ethereum on-chain programming environment in terms of both as just as a development environment in terms of building stuff, but also in terms of just being auditable, being the kind of thing that people might want to trust real money to, which
and a decentralized network of 130,000 and growing nodes doesn't help.
That's definitely a good thing to have going right there. Yeah, so this is all very exciting. I'm a little heartened to hear that actually there's just like supply chain shocks to all commodities, and we're
Part of it.
kind of exacerbating it a bit here. But yeah, so been getting two complaints. Number one is, hey, you're not giving out enough rewards, and hey, number two, you're messing up your environmental message by screwing up by having people actually buy new hardware for just for doing this. And it's like, well,
the latter is just nonsense. I'll save that for a future talk. But Bram, I sent Gene a very pretty slide that has a graph of the Chia power utilization versus Bitcoin.
Oh yeah, well, although that's I don't want to be too dismissive of this argument because that's the consumer power consumption as you're running it, not including whatever went into manufacturing it in the first place.
So no, you have to do the analysis head on and to say here's what it is, and this is much better than the alternative.
So oh yeah, well certainly when you're manufacturing hardware, a lot of what goes into making it is something other than just pumping carbon into the atmosphere. So it has costs, but is much friendlier that way to the environment. So my expectation is that work difficulty is going to keep going up crazy fast, and will hit it will hit something where people aren't having this mad dash to buying new hard drives anymore. But price discovery, there will be some kind of price discovery on May 3rd, which is a week and a day from now. We have these signals about price that are like, well, first off, they're an order of magnitude off from each other, which is
that doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. And at least on one of them, the price movements don't look natural in the slightest. It's like just completely fixed at one value. So something's wrong there. But the values that they're giving are just crazy. It's like $1,000 a Chia. Like, okay. I mean, if that happens, I'm not going to complain, but
but yeah, you'll get a little bit busier than even which probably didn't seem possible, but
we'll see what happens with all of that.
We'll see what happens to Keybase and the Keybase after that opens.
we're pretty close to breaking Keybase when you have like 900 people asking questions at the same time in the channels. It's like
it really has to move to forums at some point, or maybe I don't know what to do at some point. Like you just can't have, you can just keep adding more channels, but then there's like, you need people answering questions in all the channels, and you can't
Chia forum's getting some great traffic. Then there's a lot of good posts that are getting a lot of engagement, and it's just it's nice because you can scroll through, see your question, and somebody's answered it. So that's going to be that kind of thing is going to be invaluable when Keybase crosses 10,000 users, and it's 10 people typing at once at all hours of the day.
It's crazy.
But all right, well,
Bram, thanks for hopping on. Yeah, that's I gotta run here, but this is fun. I know we did this instead of our usual Keybase because I got to pick up my kids here shortly, so I gotta run. But yeah, thanks for hopping on, Bram. That's fun.